world moves fast. Your workday? Even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late Night's Fresh Perspective. The Last Show with David Cooper.
We think of conspiracies as happening in some shadowy government building on floor -75, but there's an even bigger conspiracy in your junk drawer. But it's not a junk conspiracy. It's old tech and things that corporations have sold you that have shadowy agreements about them. Probably. I'm here with Nathan Radke. How was that for an introduction? It's Conspiracy Corner. Nathan is a professor of conspiracy studies at Humber Polytechnic who co-hosts the Uncover Up podcast. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
I told you I'd screw up your introduction, but there's no second takes in radio. Nathan, my goodness. Corporate conspiracies, they are among us. Shadowy CEO deals, things that happen that affect the consumer that we never know of until, some big government organization breaks it up.
Yeah, I mean, when we're feeling kind of paranoid, we see conspiracies all over the place. In popular songs, we see something in the lyrics or in our drinking water, in the clouds, wherever. But yeah, there's some conspiracies way closer to home, in our junk drawers, in our closets, our light sockets. Because we can ask ourselves questions like, hey, wait, why do our electronics seem to slow down just when we're finally finished paying them off? Why do our devices seem to break just when they're out of warranty? Why are the fashionable jeans that we bought last year now embarrassing and out of date? And the answer to all of these was the concept of planned obsolescence, which is a conspiracy that hits us right where it hurts, which is our bank accounts.
Our wallets, yeah. It can happen with wage theft even. Like there was accusations of a Silicon Valley monopoly in 2014 where all the companies conspired and didn't poach each other's employees. And by not poaching each other's employees, employees couldn't get the best wage. These things happen in plain sight all the time, but there's some pretty striking examples in history.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, this concept is simple. It gets more complicated, obviously, when we get into it. But the bumper sticker version is things are deliberately engineered or designed so that they get worse sooner than they need to and then need to get replaced. And that way the manufacturer gets more sales than they would if they made things that lasted as long as they could. So I'll give you an example.
Yes.
Years ago, I was in an antique shop in Parkdale. And the owner of that shop was sort of a character. He loved to talk conspiracy theories. What do you expect from a Parkdale antique shop owner? And so when he found out that talking conspiracies was my entire profession, he took me into a back room. Now, I assumed it was so that he could murder me and turn me into a taxidermy display, but instead, what he showed me was an old light bulb with what looked like a bamboo filament, and he said that that single light bulb had been working for over 100 years.
Wait, don't light bulbs just burn out after 25 seconds? Sometimes I just install them and I see a big flash and they burn out.
See, that's the thing. No, that light bulb burning for so long, it's not actually that shocking. There's a bunch of examples of bulbs out there from before 1924 that have managed to last an extremely, ridiculously long time. And I say 1924 because in 1924, something big changed. In that a small group of light bulb manufacturers, GE, Osram, Philips, Tokyo Electric, they were dominant in the light bulb market, but they were all in competition with each other. And so what they realize is, wait a second, if we keep competing against each other to make better and longer lasting bulbs, we're going to lose a ton of profits because the bulbs are going to get so good, people won't need to replace them, and so you'll be missing out on potential sales.
It's sort of like back when the airline industry was regulated, they couldn't compete on price, so they would compete on service, and airlines kept on getting better and better and better. I know it's maybe not the same because light bulbs weren't regulated, but they were really competing on long lastingness. And so they were all doing, corporate research and science research. Science research. I sound like the idiot that I am, so I'll keep going. But all these companies back in the 20s were competing on long lasting life of light bulbs, and they were pretty successful with it. And two things they realized. One, like they're kind of out-competing each other, and why would they do that? And by doing it, consumers wouldn't replace their light bulbs.
Yeah, I mean, the consumers were benefiting from that competition because in the same way that we were getting better service on the airlines, we're getting better light bulbs. But that's when they all get together and they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Instead of pushing each other to make a better product, we are going to cap the life of all of our bulbs at 1,000 hours. And that was less than half of what a typical light bulb lasted before this agreement. Now, this is a proper conspiracy. Like, this is a group of people secretly conspiring to do something that is going to affect the population. I mean, to make it even sweeter, conspiracy-wise, they meet secretly in Geneva.
Yes, that's where all, I feel like conspiracy theorists think that the evil groups are meeting in Switzerland.
Exactly. I mean, chef's kiss to that. And they were called the Phoebus Cartel.
Wow.
Which has got a nice sinister ring to it.
It's got Illuminati vibes. I don't know why. For those thinking, okay, all these companies met and sort of conspired to create a worse product. Yes, consumers pay more, but what's the big deal? This is a violation of law, especially in the U.S. It's called antitrust law, and corporations aren't allowed to do this because it'll make the market fail. The whole point of capitalism is companies competing to deliver better products and services, and the ones that deliver the bad ones lose, and the consumer kind of wins and pays the least. This is like theft from the market. We don't think of it this way, but this is worse than stealing cash out of the register.
No, absolutely. I mean, the idea of the market, the sort of invisible hand, is that there are forces which set the prices at a price that consumers are okay with and the producers are okay with. But when something like this happens, when you have this kind of secret manipulation, it throws that all out of whack. It basically handcuffs the invisible hand of the marketplace, and you end up with people getting ripped off, which is why there have been lawsuits about this in the past, because this is a conspiracy that affects us at a really significant level.
All right, so the shadowy cabal, the Phoebus Cartel, the CEOs of major light bulb companies from around the world meet in Switzerland. Tell me more about this agreement they came to.
So, I mean, they were pretty hardcore about it. There was rigorous independent testing in all of the cartel members' factories, which means that if somebody produced a bulb that lasted longer than the agreed upon limit, then that company would get sued by the other members of the cartel. So basically, if your company makes a light bulb that's too good, the other companies are going to come after you. And this agreement lasted for a long time. It cost people untold amounts of money and the irritation of having to change light bulbs all the time. But the agreement ended in 1940 because, for obvious reasons, some of the companies were British, some were American, some were German, and some were Japanese. So obviously cooperation became a bit problematic during World War II.
There was that guy with the mustache from Germany who
guy, the whole thing. It was it's in your history books.
So the CEOs from different countries weren't allowed to or stopped getting along. They weren't allowed to work together or stop getting along. And that's how it ended? Regulators didn't step in to break this thing up?
And that's how it ended. And we have another more recent example. Look at smartphones, which are kind of the modern version of the light bulb. As we get older, as you and I have done, you've probably noticed stuff's happening to you.
Yes, my body's breaking down.
Your body's breaking down. We're not spring chickens. We are winter chickens now. It takes us longer to do things. We are slowing. And weirdly, a few years ago, people started noticing that their iPhones were behaving in the same way. It was like users were thinking, has my iPhone hit middle age? And often their phone would slow down just as a newer, hipper, sexier phone was being released on the market. And as it turns out, people weren't losing their minds. This was what was happening. Because users would update their phone with a new operating system and almost immediately would get poorer performance out of their phone. People took to social media about this. And then in 2017, Apple admitted, no, you guys aren't imagining things. There are instructions in operating system updates to deliberately slow down the performance of older phones.
Now, okay, but Apple probably denied it. How did they end up getting caught?
Well, they didn't deny it. What they did say, though, is that this was done to help preserve the life of the aging batteries in older phones.
But why hasn't any other phone done that before or since by any other manufacturer?
I mean, this is a good question. We could also ask, why weren't people told that this would happen before they downloaded the new operating system? Why weren't they informed of the option of replacing the battery in their old phones, which would improve the performance at a tiny fraction of the cost of buying a brand new phone? It's understandable people were a bit suspicious about all this.
And once they got caught and regulators stepped in and said, hey, you can't do this, magically now iPhones don't do this, and Apple complains like, hey, people aren't changing their phones enough. They were really forcing us to change our phones back then.
Yeah, and of course, the other question too is, what is honesty worth once you've already been caught?
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
You spend $25,000 on the shiniest new iPhone 75. You love it. You think it works great. You're happy with it. A few years later, a new model comes out and your phone starts acting really slow. It acts like an old piece of junk. Why? Planned obsolescence. Companies have, in the past, degraded their products, conspiring against the consumer, and that's what we're talking about, corporate conspiracies. I'm joined by Nathan Radke, a professor of conspiratorial conspiracy studies at Humber Polytechnic, who co-hosts the Uncover Up Conspiracy Cast podcast. Nathan, some of the words I just said were accurate.
Some of the words you just said were conspiracy and cast.
They were. All right, so we were talking about the Apple iPhone battery gate, I think, as it came to be known. Several years ago, they got kind of busted for intentionally slowing down older phones as new ones came out, hoping the consumer would upgrade. Now, they claim it was for battery performance, blah, blah, blah. They claimed the phones needed to do that, but they also just didn't tell the consumer until, well, I guess they got caught. Did the EU or something step in and tell them to stop?
Well, I mean, this is one advantage of the EU is that they have a lot more regulation about this kind of thing. And they've also been working on right to repair laws recently because so many of the devices that we buy now, they can't be fixed. If one component goes on them, the entire thing gets bricked. And so one of the things that you see out of the EU, especially in places like France, is this movement towards giving the consumers the right to repair their devices, to sell components, to make devices so that you can open them up and fix them, rather than as soon as one thing going, the whole thing is garbage.
Well, Apple loves sealing up their products so you can't change out the memory, the disk, the battery, the various components that might fail. If one of them fails, they want you to upgrade, but the EU has forced them to do that less. For example, the new iPhone has this standardized connector, and I remember when Apple announced this, like, wow, a compatible connector. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the EU just forced you to do that, bro. Like, you would have had a proprietary connector for your phone your whole life if you had to. They sometimes, when they get caught, they then pivot to avoid like the fallout or the court cases or whatnot.
And what you've mentioned are two of the different kinds of obsolescences that corporations can throw at us. One of them, physical obsolescence. You can use parts or components that are crucial to the device but are made to a deliberately lower standard than they could be, ensures that the part fails. And again, unless you have these right to repair laws, if a part fails, that thing is now worthless. The other one you've just mentioned is compatibility obsolescence. So imagine you buy yourself a sweet pair of high-quality wired earbuds for your smartphone. They sound great, they're comfortable, you don't need to worry about remembering to charge them, you're not going to lose one of them because they're attached to each other, you got it made. And then your phone slows down, so you get a new phone, but the new model doesn't have an earbud jack. And so at first, you buy a little dongle adapter so you can connect your old beloved earbuds to the lightning port in your new phone.
I've got about 175 of those dongles, so this is real for me, Nathan.
That's the thing. The dongles break easily, so you're buying dongle after dongle. Your house is filled with broken dongles. And then you bite the bullet. You buy some new expensive earbuds that are designed to be used with a lightning port, but then your phone slows down, and so you get the new model. And now it has a USB-C port instead of a lightning port. And then, tragically, you trip and fall over your pile of obsolete dongles and earbuds and accidentally strangle yourself.
That is a common thing that happens 9 out of 10 times every day to everyone. No, I think the real conspiracy is, why do I have a junk drawer filled with random cables that don't work that I spent money on over the last 15 years?
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have to keep buying them because they keep changing the ports. Now, the third kind of obsolescence that we get thrown is style obsolescence. Ooh. Now, this one originated with bicycles, as far as I can tell, back at the dawn of the 20th century, but car manufacturers picked up on it by the 1920s. Hey, you don't want to be driving around in last year's car, do you? You'd look
No.
ridiculous. Last year's cars had round taillights. Now they have square taillights. What are you, some kind of round taillighter? Absurd.
Interesting. So just little stylistic changes, and then the market trying to get the hype for the new model, even though the old one works perfectly well. Interesting.
Exactly. I mean, the most obvious place to see this, of course, is in the fashion industry, particularly the fast fashion industry, because we're told through influencers and fashion magazines what styles are in and which styles are played and tired. But those influencers and magazines, they're given their marching orders by the manufacturers, who either pay them directly in the case of social media influencers or through advertisements like in magazines.
Is the conspiracy here just trying to take our money? Like, is that...
Well, I mean, it isn't even a conspiracy so much as it's just capitalism. And you can see how manufacturers, of course, they want to use all of these tactics. Like clothing manufacturers can use physical obsolescence and style obsolescence against each other. Because by constantly changing fashion trends, you push people into buying new clothes more often, which means that the clothing needs to be made cheaper so that people can afford to keep up with the trends. I mean, you don't want your hemline to be wrong. But this means that the clothing needs to be made with cheaper materials and processes, which makes for clothing that doesn't last as long. So what we end up with our clothes is a bit of a race to see which falls apart first, the sewing or the style. And either way, the customer is going to need to head back to the supplier again in short order.
So what are the impacts of some of these behaviors that corporations do? Some illegal, some antitrust in the case of Apple, like, conspiring to keep their phones obsolete and blah, 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 but some perfectly legal. What is the impact on the consumer?
I mean, one obvious effect of this is that you end up spending more money than you otherwise would. I mean, you buy cheap stuff because it seems like you're saving money, but it's a false savings. You'd be better off with a mid-priced vacuum cleaner that's made out of good components that last for 20 years, rather than having 5 cheap ones that last for 4 years. And this is something that, of course, when you talk to an old person, they say, oh, in my day, this used to be built right, and this used to be built right. And unlike a lot of what old people say, there is something to this idea. Things used to be built to last. And the other issue, which is extremely significant and dangerous, is waste. I mean, it isn't just our junk drawers that are cluttered with out-of-date chargers and adapters. We make 60 million tons of e-waste every year. And because of the elements in the components, like that's difficult to dispose of safely. Lead and mercury ends up leaching into the soil.
And rare earth metals that are in your phones and your computers, they're hard to mine and they're hard to recycle. And if you just throw it in the trash instead of recycling it properly, which I'm sure many people are guilty as charged, it's now just gone. And yeah, so there's kind of a lot of elements to the waste component here.
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of those elements are mined in very hazardous conditions from maybe countries that have leadership that, is a little bit dicey. And so we're contributing to those dicey leaderships. We are also contributing to hazardous work conditions for the miners. And when you look at fashion, 90 million tons of waste, of textile waste going into landfills every year because we don't want to wear last year's jeans.
So what is the consumer to do? Like we started off talking about this light bulb conspiracy. For those that weren't listening, back in the 1920s, 30s, light bulb manufacturers conspired to keep the life of bulbs down, creating waste, creating excessive consumption. They could have created light bulbs that lasted a much longer time. What is the average consumer to do?
Well, I mean, the hope is that we see some, again, at like the state level, we see some laws coming in that the antitrust laws we've already talked about, the right to repair laws, that kind of thing. As far as us as individuals, we just sort of have to be more mindful about our shopping habits, to look at the true cost of when we buy something. When we buy something cheap, it seems as though the cost is low. But if you look at the actual cost, the cost of having to throw something out, all of the waste, the constant replacing and rebuying, those sort of seductive low prices are hiding something sinister. And as is often the case, sometimes this sinister manipulation that we worry about, it's actually right out in the open, and we're the ones that are actively contributing to it by continuing our shopping patterns.
All right. Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope you do all your Christmas shopping and buy great gifts for your family members and loved ones. We're here with Nathan Radke, a professor of conspiracy studies at Humber Polytechnic. Do check out his podcast. It's called The Uncover Up. Or is it just called Uncover Up?
think it's the Uncover Up.
Good, I got it right the first time. Nathan, what a joy it was to have you. Thank you for being here.
Always have to be here.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.